By sunrise, a brand new black pipe fence marched like a steel zipper straight through the HOA's Serenity Garden, bisecting the koi pond, decapitating a stone gnome, and neatly isolating the pickleball court's north half like a quarantined crime scene. Denise Puit, the HOA president, arrived in a visor and fury and realized her community trail now ended at my locked gate with a sign the sheriff had helped me hang that read "No trespassing, not even you, Denise. My name is Caleb Rhodes. I ranch quietly on the edge of Messi Hollow, a development that peddles tranquility and then schedules a committee meeting to argue about the shade of tranquility. My place, Rhodes Creek Ranch, wraps their subdivision like a big, patient arm. I keep to myself, mending fences, minding cattle, drinking morning coffee while watching dust twirl through sunbeams. Denise Puit runs the Messi Hollow HOA like a minor dictatorship with canvas skills. She likes clipboards, capital letters, and the power of a courtesy notice. She also likes other people's land, apparently. It started polite and got weird fast. A flyer announced a community riding trail expansion behind the cul-de-sac, on a map that colored a slice of my pasture as amenity zone. The map was professionally printed, laminated even, with little tree symbols and a legend that made my private property look like a public park. I called the number on the flyer. Denise answered and said with a sweet voice, "The board approved it. The neighborhood needs access to nature." I told her that was my land, not theirs. She went silent for a moment, then laughed like I had told a joke. "Mr. Rhodes," she said, "we have to think about the greater good here. Community wellness is everyone's responsibility." I explained that my ranch was not part of the HOA and never had been. She sighed like I was a child refusing vegetables. "We will send you the meeting minutes," she said, and hung up. The minutes never came. Then came strangers on my property. Moms with strollers at dawn, kids on scooters racing through my cattle paths, a yoga class at sunset that left glitter sparkling across my field like someone had murdered a disco ball. One morning I found a woman setting up an easel to paint my barn. When I asked what she was doing, she smiled and said Denise told us this was community space now. I posted signs. Big ones. Clear ones. No trespassing signs that a blind man could read from 50 yards. Denise sent a letter in response, delivered in a lavender envelope with the HOA seal embossed on it like a royal decree. "Your signage disrupts community cohesion," it said. Community cohesion. Like my private ranch was some kind of group project. Furthermore, the letter continued, "Your failure to maintain aesthetic standards reflects poorly on property values." A week later, blossom-painted bollards appeared at my open field like sprinkles on a steak. Decorative posts marking a trail that had no business being there. Each bollard had a little plaque with inspirational quotes. "Live, laugh, love. Find your path. Namaste." They were cemented into my ground. She escalated with fake infractions next. I started getting citations in my mailbox, printed on official-looking stationery. Unapproved agricultural odors. Unattractive hay geometry. And my personal favorite, excessive fence rusticity. That one came with a photograph of my perfectly functional split-rail fence and a note suggesting I upgrade to wrought iron with decorative finials. Every time I reminded her the HOA line ended at their last mailbox, she smiled like a cat who had found the tuna key. She started showing up at my property line with a clipboard, taking notes, photographing my equipment. Once she measured my gate with a tape measure and shook her head like a disappointed teacher. Finally, she held a town hall meeting and unveiled her crown jewel. I attended, standing in the back in my work boots while neighbors sipped wine and nibbled cheese cubes. The HOA had granted an easement across the back of my ranch to connect the Serenity Garden, the new pickleball court, and a planned gazebo she called the Mesquite Pavilion. She had a PowerPoint presentation with architectural renderings, a timeline, and a budget of $47,000 from the HOA Reserve Fund. The room erupted in applause. A neighbor in the back raised his hand and asked, "Caleb agreed to this?" Denise nodded with confidence and said, "We have community consent." She gestured to a petition with signatures, none of them mine. Translation, she asked zero of me. Not a phone call. Not a letter. Not even a courtesy knock on my door. She just decided my land was now their amenity and drew it on a map like some kind of suburban conquistador with a laminating machine. I drove to the county recorder the next morning. My plat map, the original survey with bearings and distances, showed a clean boundary. No easements. No licenses. No nothing. The property line was crystal clear, recorded in 1889 when my great-great-grandfather filed the original claim. But I wanted to be absolutely sure. I hired a surveyor anyway. His name was Tom, a quiet man with a beard and a reputation for precision. Bright vest, laser tripod, the works. He spent 2 days measuring, recalculating, triple-checking against GPS coordinates and historical records. His stakes popped up like prairie dogs around the Serenity Garden. Turned out Denise's board had built the garden and half a pickleball court 10 feet over the line. On my land. Also, her prize hydrangea hedge. On my soil, drinking my water, fed by my sprinkler runoff. The koi pond was entirely on my property, all 700 gallons of it. The decorative bridge with the wind chimes? Mine. The meditation labyrinth made of river stones? Mine. Even the bench with the plaque that said donated by the Puit family was sitting on Rhodes' land. Then the kicker. A memo from her HOA attorney surfaced at a meeting, leaked by a board member with a conscience, a retired accountant named Margaret who could not stomach the dishonesty anymore. The memo quietly warned that we cannot create easements on non-common property. The attorney had used bold text and underlined it twice. Denise had forged ahead anyway and adjusted an internal map to make it look official. That forged map had a county seal she screenshot from Google Images and pasted on like a kindergarten art project. The resolution was so low you could see the pixelation. That is when my sheriff buddy, Martinez, used a phrase I will never forget. Counterfeit seal on a recorded representation. Her face went the color of skim milk when he said it out loud at the next board meeting. Her hands started shaking. She tried to laugh it off and said it was just a visual aid, but Martinez was not smiling. I built a fence. Not out of spite. Out of boundary. 8-foot steel pipe sunk deep, welded true, set exactly on the surveyed line. I hired a crew that specialized in ranch fencing, 3 men who worked like a machine. Sheriff Martinez watched, sipped his gas station coffee, and nodded each time the post driver thunked into the ground. We added cattle guards and 2 legal access gates, both locked with heavy chains and padlocks. The fence cut right through everything they had built on my land. The koi pond. The pickleball court. The walking trail. The Serenity Garden became the split-in-half garden overnight. When Denise arrived that morning and saw the fence, she screamed. Actually screamed. Her visor flew off her head when she gestured wildly at the construction crew. Martinez stepped forward and said calmly, "Ma'am, he is on his property line. You are not." Next HOA meeting, I showed up quiet, hat in hand, with copies of the survey, the plat, and a letter from the county. Cease and desist all encroachments. Remove structures from Rhodes Creek Ranch. Potential civil penalties for trespass and unpermitted construction. I handed a copy to every board member. Denise tried to interrupt me 3 times, her voice climbing higher each time. "This is absurd," she said. "We have invested community resources. We have approval." Martinez, sitting in the front row now in his uniform, set a ticket book on the podium like a paper anvil. The room went silent. Neighbors did the suburban math. If Denise was wrong, their dues were funding an illegal garden and a half-court they could not use. The applause this time was for the word restitution. People started asking questions. Loud questions. Where did our money go? Who authorized this? Did anyone verify ownership? Denise tried to adjourn the meeting, but someone called for an emergency vote. The motion carried 31-4. Removal day was a pageant of consequences. Contractors sliced the pickleball court along my fence line with a concrete saw that shrieked like a dying engine. The remaining half looked like a bitten cookie, awkward and useless. The koi were evacuated in orange Home Depot buckets, carried past my "No trespassing" sign like tiny embarrassed refugees. I counted 11 trips. When they tore up the garden, the backhoe nudged Denise's hydrangea hedge and the superintendent pointed to the stake in her yard. "Ma'am," he said loudly so everyone could hear, "this is on his parcel." 3 feet onto his parcel. She had to cut the hedge back 3 feet. Her best curb appeal plaque went with it, uprooted and tossed in the dumpster with a metallic clang. She stood there watching, her mouth a thin line, her eyes wet. Then the legal shoe dropped. The county fined the HOA $12,000 for unpermitted construction on private land. My attorney, a sharp woman named Carla who smiled like a shark, negotiated triple damages for trespass and a recorded affidavit voiding any claimed easement forever. The settlement came to $38,000. The forged seal stunt earned Denise her own separate charges: misrepresentation and filing false documents. Criminal charges, not civil. The district attorney took it seriously because, as he explained in court, falsifying government documents undermines public trust in recorded property systems. For dessert, the State Real Estate Board opened an ethics case. Apparently selling an amenity on land you do not own is a bad look when you brag about being a licensed community consultant on Facebook. Her profile had pictures of the Serenity Garden with captions like "creating value through vision." Denise was removed as president by a vote that sounded like a stadium wave. 53-2. The only votes in her favor were her own and her sister's. The civil judgment became a lien on her property when the HOA's reserve fund could not cover the whole restitution. To satisfy it, she sold her pearl-white golf cart named Compliant. The buyer? Tom the surveyor, who parks it beside his tripod as a joke. He painted the words "Property Line Enforcer" on the side. The criminal charges resulted in a plea deal after her attorney argued for leniency because she had no prior record. 18 months probation, 200 hours of community service, and a fine of $5,000. When the judge read the sentence, Denise stood frozen at the defense table, her mouth open, her face pale as chalk, staring at nothing like someone had just told her gravity stopped working. Her attorney touched her elbow twice before she finally sat down.